Hey, James.
Hey, Kuda.
Thanks a lot for sitting down with us. I've got a few questions, and I'm pretty sure the people watching are eager to know. Why is mental health important?
Well, why do you think it's important?
To be fair, I'm not allowed to do a lot of thinking, but if you're asking me, I don't know, man. Post pandemic, I feel like it's the buzzword right now. I feel like mental health is on a new radar, so to speak. All of a sudden, people who weren't discussing it are bringing it up. There's a lot more mental health days, and not just celebrations or awareness days, but I mean, I'm assuming, because I'm not the expert here, that there's a lot more acceptance for mental health days, and that's an assumption based on some insight. I've, I've definitely taken up a mental health day since the pandemic, but I suppose from your insight, what do you think makes mental health important?
I think before we go down the track of what makes it important, we have to understand why we're going down this track of understanding mental health. You know, um, since the pandemic, we use words like the new normal, and that sometimes implies that we're supposed to feel how we felt before the pandemic. And the truth is, we don't. Those 2 years have done a number on us, whether we want to admit it or not. And sometimes we're only feeling it a year or two, sometimes 3 years later,
Right.
because it's a ripple effect. Um, and so we have to acknowledge that there is still a lot of stigmatization around the word mental health,
Yeah.
mental well-being, counseling, psychology. Those are the things that have tons of stigma attached to it, and it makes it harder to go down the track of addressing it because you feel so ashamed of talking about something that shouldn't
Right.
that you shouldn't feel ashamed, but you do because you see those really extreme stories, and then you think, well, I'm not that, and that's mental health.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's important because when you acknowledge it, it becomes really basic. It becomes something very palatable. It, it, but it's sometimes presented as so abstract. Do you know what I mean? Like, it, how many mental health workshops have you been to since, whether it's
Don't even,
corporate or through the community,
don't even get me started. I mean, I feel like you've seen one, you've seen them all.
right?
Yeah.
And it's nothing against those workshops. It's just we have to be more creative about how we're presenting mental health,
Right.
in a way that allows people to absorb it,
Mm.
because that's the big thing here. It's not that we don't want mental health. It just feels like mental health is so much more work, and our plates are already so full.
Wow, that's deep. You touched on feelings a few times there, and I'm not one to play down feelings. I don't know how often I feel, and that's probably something worth exploring. I don't know when the last time I talked to a friend about my feelings. I vent a lot.
Yeah.
Probably just didn't acknowledge the actual feeling.
Yeah.
But what can you talk like speak about when it comes to feelings, and maybe how myself and other men can start to actually approach the topic without feeling like it's not for us, and it's for those that have feelings and they have struggles, like you said. I'm not that bad is a very common, I guess, can we call it like a standard? You look at that and you go, hey, that's for them, I'm
Yeah.
fine.
Well, we touched on a few things there. I think the first thing is you said that you don't talk about feelings, but you vent.
Mm.
You have to look at it like a kettle that's boiling, and then steam comes out when it goes past 100 degrees Celsius. That's what venting is. It's just gotten to the point where you can't keep this stuff in, and then you vent. So you do talk about your feelings, but venting is an unhealthy way of talking about your feelings because, like the kettle analogy, it it steams and blows because it's past 100. It's past that boiling point, and now steam has to go up because the water is evaporating. Similarly, when you're venting, it's past the point where you can keep it inside. And now all of the stuff comes out, and when it comes out, it's uncontrolled. You know what I mean? So it's not that you don't want to talk about feelings, it's that your body's releasing all of this at one uncontrolled go. And you don't know who you're hurting, you don't know the implications of your words. It's not even your fault, if I'm being honest, because you're not taught how to talk about your feelings. Um,
That
And
makes me feel a lot better. Thank you.
well, you're welcome. And to your other point, like about men's mental health, and yeah, you're right, because there's a lot of um, there's a lot of villainizing men because we took away women's salaries. It's the pay gap, and um, it's not that none of that stuff is true, but that's not fair for all men to go down that. And usually, it's the one who's most empathetic, and those are the people who generally tend to get hurt the most because you feel like you're part of the problem, and you may not be. You might have actually been part of the solution.
Right.
You don't know how to talk about it. You don't know how to address this, and then you just again you bottle it all up, and then it has to come out.
True.
How does it come out? Venting is probably the nicest way for it to come out.
True.
Sometimes people find it at the bottom of a bottle. Sometimes people find it in addiction. So there's so many worse things, abuse. But it all comes from a place of frustration of themselves, and that they wish that they could talk about it without feeling ashamed of who they are, how they think. Truth is, we're a lot more similar than we are different. And when these men's groups come together and they start talking about feelings and what you're going through, you realize you're not alone. There's a group of people who are struggling like you're struggling, and that community feel is what brings people together and helps them get out of a tough spot.
You're giving gold right now, man. There's a few things you touched on that I really want to explore a little bit further. And of course, I think it's fair to say some of this you have to experience in one of your workshops, to be fair. Man, it's gold. But anyway, with that being said, I wanted to touch on the statement, hurt people hurt people. And I've experienced this in a few different types of conversations, but let's keep it on the focus on men. Like you said, could be a really well-intentioned man who still gets the brunt of, men have done X, Y, and Z. And I think, I talk a lot about having grace in how we do things, but you have to understand that the person who's hurt is the person who's still trying to fight for their equal rights and an equal platform in their life, and it's easy to feel attacked.
I think you're right. Hurt people hurt, and I don't want to put it across like we're excusing the behavior. Right. It's more about understanding the behavior and recognizing where it's coming from. If these guys who are hurting, these men who are hurting, and when they are abusive, you're right, they probably got hurt maybe in their childhood or maybe more recently, and they don't know how to handle it. They don't know that there are so many avenues that they can explore to get the help that they need. And it's very rarely generalized help. It can be quite specific, but there's always a fear, right? Like can I go back and these wounds that I've taken years to mend, am I reopening them? What if we do start talking about these feelings, and then the relationships that even though I didn't like it in the beginning, I've reconciled them already. Do we now go back to a place that I don't like you now because I've had to dig up these old wounds?
Right.
So hurt people hurt, yeah. And we spend time to understand them. But then we also have to make a system that allows these people to go out and get the help that they need without feeling stigmatized, without feeling that relationships will end up being broken. Can we help address the problem? Do you know what I mean? Because if a hurt person is hurting you, you hurting them back will only hurt them, make them hurt you more. That's not how you don't fight fire with fire. I know that's a saying, but that's not how fire is fought. Fire is fought with water. You fight fire with fire, there's more fire. So
also, I think we're still in the don't have an open fire season, so it goes without saying, let's not have open fires, people. With that being said, you've used a particular word a fair bit, and I want to go back to understanding, seeking understanding. I feel like that was something you touched on in the critical thinking workshop.
Yeah.
There's a golden nugget that you shared, and I kind of want to give you the platform and the space to speak on that, because it starts with seeking understanding.
Yeah, I was wondering what that nugget might have been. Yeah, you're right.
There were many.
It was a lot of times with critical thinking, people assume that it's about solving problems, and there's so many problems that need solving, and so that's the misconception that people have, that they're going to go out there and solve these problems. But the truth is, you're never going to solve a problem if your goal is to solve the problem, because you don't understand the problem well enough to solve it. You know what I mean? So with our critical thinking workshops, the goal is to help you understand something, and the byproduct of understanding it is solving it. And throughout the workshop, like you experienced it, right? Where if you don't focus on solving the problem, but rather understanding the problem, you solve the problem. But as soon as you focus on solving the problem, you will never solve the problem, because you don't understand nearly enough about it to provide solutions that actually work.
I don't know how to put it into words, but even knowing that now, the human nature in me still goes, what's the problem? Let's solve the problem. And I'm like, no, that's not what James said. That's not the workshop. Speaking of workshops, one other one I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
Communication.
Yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it? That was a really good one.
I'm not going to snitch on any couples who were in the room, but they walked out with some tools.
Yeah.
That wasn't even the point. But you were able to help us elevate our way of communication. I don't know if you want to share anything about that.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to. That communication exercise is really about listening and active listening. And I know that's a really cool word, and everybody says they know how to active listen. And there's simple traits with active listening, but part of active listening is knowing how to be assertive and not aggressive. Well, just listening in general is about learning how to be assertive and not aggressive. And a lot of times we confuse the two. And more often than not, it's the empathetic people who need to be more assertive that don't know how to be assertive because they're so worried about being aggressive. Whereas aggressive people are never worried about being aggressive because they know they're aggressive, And so those people who are struggling to be assertive, they're the ones who are usually very empathetic. They're the ones who know how to listen to people. The challenge is those guys who are listening, they end up emotionally drained so regularly.
Yeah.
And then when you're out, you know that situation where you meet somebody, and by the end of that hour, it's like you spent a whole weekend just listening to a million different problems, and you're just exhausted, and you just need to go home and take a nap. So it's one of those things where within that workshop we teach you how to shift that focus, and it's not hard. Like you saw that, right? It was just a tiny little pivot. It's just a nudge. You just nudged a little bit away so that you're looking at something differently. And as soon as you looked at it, it just, like, you went through it, right? What did it feel like when you went through that?
Changed everything, and I experienced it on both ends. You know what I mean? Without giving away too much, it changed everything. And as a person who's a big talker, and that doesn't mean I don't listen. I love hearing people's stories and asking people questions. But there's something important about understanding, how much energy a single conversation can really take out of you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And look, that's a whole other thing that we could easily plug. But at this point, I feel like they might as well come to a workshop.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that, man. Like, it does make me really happy to see the pivots and the shifts, because, I mean, you saw it was very animated when people felt like that they were being cheated and that I was being unfair and that I was setting the odds against them. And you saw I didn't react to any of it. It's okay if that's how it is, but you just nudge you a bit, and then you see that full scale change, because again, this is just, you don't know what you don't know.
True.
And the goal of these workshops is to just nudge you, not change you, not like, listen, let's spend the next 10 minutes meditating so you feel better about yourself. That's not mental health. And I think that's the stigma. The stigma is mental health is talking about feelings and meditating afterwards so you feel better. But mental health is about day-to-day living. Mental health is about communication. Mental health is about addressing problems. Because let's take the critical thinking one. If you spend all that time trying to solve the problem that is unsolvable because you don't understand it, you just get stressed by the problem, right? And then if you're, working for a company or something and you have a deadline to meet, now you're anxious because what's your boss going to say? But all of that came from trying to solve a problem that you didn't understand yet. And I know it sounds so trivial, right? Like, oh, I'll just understand the problem.
Yeah.
But how do you understand the problem? What are the tools that you need to understand something? And that's why it was so cool. We did a workshop just this past weekend where there was sort of a eureka moment for one of the gentlemen in the workshop where it sort of just hit him in the middle and he went, oh my God, this is brilliant. Because you feel the shift in your head. You reconcile that almost instantly because you're like, oh, I've just been looking at this thing the complete wrong way. I've always been this way, but actually just this way, just that little bit, 1 degree will make a world of difference.
That's wild. And yes, as someone who experienced the workshop, I think we had a fair few of those eureka moments. And that's why it was a lot of fun. It works. The communication stuff works. I made the comment about couples in the room because, there were couples in the room.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to snitch on myself, but I've just done so because I want you guys to know that it was very, very unique and impactful. But it's not just for couples.
No. And I think that's the stigmatization, right? Because if couples go for counseling, it's like, oh, okay, tell me how to listen to my partner better. Tell me more about how I'm doing wrong. Tell me more about what I need to be better at. But it's really not that. And sometimes even just tell me how I need to listen better. It sometimes feels like an attack, doesn't it? Whereas the way this stuff is presented, it's presented in a way that it's not about attacking. It's about understanding. Everything is about understanding. Even the time management workshop, it's about understanding how time works. And as soon as you figure this out and it clicks in your head that time is not about time, but time is about energy. As soon as that clicks, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Because, and this because like even in the time management workshop, when you spend time with someone you really enjoy, and then you always say, like, oh my God, it's been 5 hours. Where has the time gone?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. The time didn't go anywhere.
Like that.
It's the energy. Energy is what controls time. And you'll notice because when you're relaxed and you're trying to go from point A to point B, you're not worried about being late. But when you're late, you're like, why? Why is this time going so fast? Why is traffic moving so slow?
Okay, now I feel attacked. But you make a very good point. Carry on.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. A lot of the stuff that we do, and that's what mental health is. Mental health is these really small bits and pieces of our life that once we understand it better and we're just nudged a little bit in the right direction, right? And it's really just 1%. I know that you've heard that saying, right? Like, 1% every day and you get this. 1% every day actually equates to just under 37% improvement. Can you imagine if you were 37% better next year than you were this year? How massive would that be? And I'm not even saying we have to be 1% better every day. I'm just saying that 1% that you shift, that 1% is how you understand something a little bit differently. Not better, just differently. And sometimes understanding it differently helps you understand it better because it's different. It's a world beyond what you know. And that allows you to see things differently and it allows you to approach it differently because you've got a totally different perspective on, and that's why the communication exercise is so good. Because I'm not teaching people how to speak to your partner. I'm teaching people how to listen to people. And
that's useful everywhere.
Exactly. It's just that you'll relate it to the thing that you wish was just better at, which is why the people who were there as couples related it to couples.
That's right.
Right? But if you weren't and it was more of a corporate setting, then that's how you'd apply it.
Yeah.
Because it's generic but specific. It's presented in a way that is supposed to be unique to you, each of you in the room, because you're going to listen to it with your ears. And it was built that way. so that when you absorb it, it's a way that, wow, okay, this is very personal. It's clearly not meant to be personal, but it feels personal when I receive it.
Yeah.
Because that was how all of this stuff was designed. So I'm glad you loved it. I'm glad it's helping you and your partner. That wasn't the intention.
Yeah, we're not supposed to put that on camera. I wasn't one of the couples that I was talking about, but I was. But it really did. It really did. And can I get you to just sum it up for those that have never done this? And I'll probably start by saying this. I've got a friend who had never talked about mental health the way that they did after they walked out of that session. And like you said, we weren't walking out going, oh, feelings. Yeah. It was more, okay, so if I try and communicate better, I will improve that situation by that amount. Yeah.
And I think that sums it up perfectly, because that is mental health. We began by asking, why is mental health so important? It's important because it's not about feelings all the time, and it's not about all of these things that we stigmatize. Mental health is just, how do we function every day? How do we interact with the people around us? How do we interact with our surroundings? And a lot of times we forget this part. How do we interact with ourselves? Do you know what I mean? Because when you can't solve that problem, you think you're a failure. But the truth is, you just didn't know the approach. And you saw it.
Yeah.
How basic some of those answers were. Do you know what I mean? But because the understanding wasn't there, it inevitably crosses into that realm where it just goes sideways hard. Yeah. Right?
Oh,
and
honestly.
So it really is, mental health is how you interact with all of those things, but yourself as well. True. Because, love, those are really nice buzzwords, aren't they? True. But what does that look like? So, I'll treat myself to a nice meal, and I'll go on a nice holiday. But what is it about the meal? What is it about the holiday? What is it about the thing that I'm doing for myself that is making me feel good? Yeah. And why am I doing it? Yeah. You may argue that, you're doing it because I want to treat myself. Okay, and then what is supposed to happen after I treat myself? Well, I feel good about it. And what's the point? And that's why sometimes a lot of these terms just get lost. Because we were like, self-care, self-love. I'll go eat a sandwich that I really enjoy. And
the "and" is killing me, bro. You're so right. And look, I was told I should probably take better care of myself and I should have self-care Saturdays or whatever, but I'll probably just unwind. And
because that's not going to help you understand you, because you're just doing the thing that you think will help you, and you're not wrong. It does, but you have to know why you're doing it. You have to understand it. And a lot of mental health is about understanding. Like the way we used our therapy or the way the coaching sessions work, it's all about understanding. And that understanding and helping you understand yourself is what really happens a lot in that workshop. Because we're not trying to solve problems. The entire workshop is about understanding. Even when we culminate in the multicultural
identity.
The cultural identity workshop. The one and the whole point of the cultural identity, finishing with the cultural identity, is so that you dive into the realm of understanding you, because you're out here trying to get other people to help you, or even when you're trying to help yourself, you don't understand yourself enough. So it still goes back to that very first thing that we're doing. You're solving a problem, but you don't understand the problem. So whatever you're using as a solution isn't the right thing. You know what I mean? It's you're putting a Band-Aid over a broken bone. You have to understand, why is there pain? It's not a cut, it's not a flesh wound, it's a broken bone. No amount of Band-Aids are going to help you. So everything that we do is about understanding. And through the course of these very unique workshops, as you understand yourself better, you'll hit that eureka moment where, as you experience, right, it just pivots. And like when you felt it the first time, whether it was the critical thinking or the communications, what was it that was going through your mind as you sort of like, God damn.
Got kind of mad that no one had told me this already, but that's kind of the current climate. It's like, why weren't we taught this really fundamental tool, to deal with all the struggle out there? It's one of those things. There's a whole list of things I wish I was taught in school, but that's a whole other video.
Yeah, of
you know
course.
what I mean? But even then, man, like I got a deeper understanding. I literally got a deeper understanding of communication, critical thinking, trying to understand instead of solve. And you know what they say about men? We're problem solvers, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to that.
There is. And I think sometimes we also get very lost in this terminology, like it's just a man's thing, because women as well.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat. The pandemic almost hit a reset button where whether you're a man or you're a woman, you're dealing with things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because you're a woman also, it doesn't mean like, oh, you're just the first gonna jump into mental health and get therapy or something. It's really not. It's not a gender specific thing. At least that's not how I see it. I see it as a people thing, as a culture thing. Because certain cultures aren't going to go talk about their feelings. Right?
Yep.
And certain cultures aren't going to spend time trying to understand themselves better. Because they have bigger problems to deal with. But if you don't understand yourself better, you're going to struggle with those problems anyway.
Right.
And so it's almost like just spend a little bit of time. There's this really old analogy where there's two people chopping at a tree with an axe. And they both chop the tree every day for 8 hours. Except the first person is chopping that tree non-stop for 8 hours. And the second person does 4 hours, takes a 2-hour break, comes back, chops it for 2 hours more. But the second person is the one that always has way more wood. Always. Because while that first person is busy chopping, that second person is busy sharpening their axe. And so, again, you're just working really hard, and that's good. But the world that we live in today, it's not about just hard work.
Right.
My mom and dad were couriers. I've never seen people work harder than them. They were just running around buildings and shipping parcels and all that stuff. By the logic of just working hard, they should be somewhere. They weren't. And I'm not knocking on them. They're lovely people. They made so much work. They put so much work in themselves to change away from the culture, to be the parents that they love to be for their kids, for myself and my siblings. And so watching them shift is the thing that I'm most proud about them doing. And it's that change about understanding, oh, is there a different way? What is that different way? Oh, can I understand that way a little bit better, please? And then going down and practicing that for yourself.
You've dropped so many nuggets, man. Like I said, like at this point, they might as well jump into a workshop. And I'm pretty sure there'll be an opportunity to pick at your brain.
Yeah, well, for the parents one, yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, how many times have we said, why won't our parents just understand that we can't raise our kids the way they raised us? And then when we tell our parents that, they get mad and go, look at how you turned out. And then you're thinking, yeah, I turned out this way in spite of what you did to me.
Think. We don't say these things out loud.
Yeah, you think. But I think, yeah, I mean, you're right. You can't raise your kids the same way parents raised you. But equally, is a parent if they don't have a child to parent? Do you know what I mean? Who are they if they're not parents?
Yeah.
Because they gave up everything to become a parent. And now, because you're grown up and you have your own kids, and of course you've got your own life, is a parent still a parent then?
Oof, they're gonna have to answer that question.
And again, that's just what happens in the parenting coaching, the parental coaching. All we're trying to do is understand where we're coming from. Because the more we understand each other, the easier it is to make the adjustments.
I heard something once. It's easier to steer a moving vehicle than one that stands still. So these workshops seem to be a great start, even if you walk away with one takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I think, thank you for saying that. That's my only goal when I wrote these workshops and I started pitching them. And I've attended this stuff. And again, it's not a knock on mental health workshops. It's just, if you've been, like you said, if you've been to one, you've been to 10. They're all very similar because you have to be a little bit more creative in the way you approach this. And is mine the best? For now, I think it is. And then somebody's going to take it and make it better. And great. Because then we're going to have a better way of addressing the challenges that we have in the world that we're living in. Because that's all we can do. We can just keep adjusting and adjusting and adjusting as the world changes around us. You know, our parents grew up with what is considered love is food on your plate, clothes on your back, roof over your head. That's love. Because their parents went through the war. And then that's all they understood as love. And so that's what they gave us as love. Right? Food on your food in front of you, clothes on your back, a shelter over your head. But you didn't know anything about war. You don't know anything about those things. So if you don't know those things, that's not enough. Because you needed to maybe be hugged a little bit more. You needed to be told that you had value. You needed to be told that they were proud of you. Right. You know, you needed to be happy. You needed so much more. And they didn't know how to do it. And so moving forward, now we're trying to do that for our kids. But is that truly going to be enough? Yeah, probably not. Because they're living in a different world now. They're living in a world with phones and iPads and information. And so even though we're trying to provide them all of this, there's going to be a point where we must adjust again because we have to incorporate all of those extra stuff that is now in their generation. And that's how we train our kids. That's how we teach them. Because when we can adjust and they can see that we can adjust, then when they become parents, they can adjust. And that's how we help evolve generation across generation. That's what needs to happen.
That's powerful stuff, man. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I feel like I've taken up way too much of your time to not actually be taking notes. So I'm gonna watch this back. But honestly, I took a ton of notes, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's for me. That's for me to marinate.
That's all right. Well, somebody said somebody said something very similar. Like, oh, they've taken a lot of notes, and I was like, listen, that's your little Bible now.
Yeah, there it is. Well, but something I learned is, well, hey, it's all well and good to write it down.
Yeah.
But you need to actually go reflect on it, put some action behind it, you know what I mean, and actually practice it.
Yeah, absolutely. You say reflect. There's this, I attended a leadership workshop a couple of months ago, and they said, do you know why men make really good leaders compared to women? Men are extremely good decision makers. They don't think twice. They just know what needs to get done to get it done. It's like food. What does a man want to eat? They know almost instantly. And then women take a long time to think about what they want for food. But do you know where the man falls short? Reflections. Men does not spend enough time reflecting. And that's where women leaders really step up. Because they spend a lot of time reflecting. And that's why they take a long time to order the food. Because it's not about what food they want. They will consider things like, what does he want? What has he had over the last few days? Can I recommend something that's different? Because I don't want him to eat the same thing again because I care about him. And that delays the decision-making process. But that's why women evolve faster. Because they spend a lot more time reflecting. And I share that just to show it's not about whether you're a man or a woman leader. It's about how much work are you putting in to understand those things and work on them. Because whoever works on them is the one who moves forward. That's right. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So if you're a man, then you should be working on reflections. If you're a woman, you should be working on decision making. Yeah. So it takes gender out. It's just about what are you working on.
Yeah. Deep. Those of you watching were able to glean something out of it because this is how it felt in the workshop, man.
Yeah.
This is how it felt. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for joining us. It's been awesome having you. I don't know if you want to reflect on anything over the past week and a bit that you've been visiting Perth, other than the heat waves. I don't know what you brought with you. Take it with you.
You know what? I genuinely feel like I might, if I'm being honest. I think one of the things that I can comment on is that there is so much that people here in WA want to do.
Mm.
You know, I live in Singapore, and it's a different kind of culture there. In here, it's just so much of it is like, what can we do to help? And I've met so many people in the culturally and linguistically diverse communities across all of them. And you know, we met a few of these cultural leaders from the different ethnic communities, and they've had suicides this past month from very young people, and they were so determined to find something to help people deal with stuff.
Yeah.
And so I've never seen this much determination and willingness to want to explore something different so that the communities can benefit from this. You know what I mean? I think it's one thing to oh yeah, we'll just talk about it. But I've seen so many of you guys like, okay, we just need something different. I've seen so many of your different communities suggest, can we bring in external help to allow our communities to understand certain things better so that we can help them cope with how hard life is? Because the truth is, life is hard. And no one will ever know how hard life is for you because it's unique to you and you alone. And that's what I notice with my visits to all the different communities here in WA, that there is such an acknowledgement from people in leadership positions to want to see the change for their communities. And that makes me really happy, because it just, you know, community is one of the most strongest foundations any relationship can be developed around. You know, there's 4 kinds of different types of relationships, and I can tell you community is the strongest. And it did fill me with a lot of joy that so many people in positions that can influence change. I don't know if I'm allowed to name drop or anything, but
we'll bleep it out if we have to.
Yeah, but just seeing how determined people were
Yeah.
to impact change, you know, and not allow. And one of the things I noticed with these people in these leadership positions, they don't allow their personal experience of life to influence what needs to happen next. Because it sounded like, when I met them, it sounded like they spent so much time reflecting, right? And I'm talking about men and women, yeah, who spent so much time reflecting on their own journey that they've learned to deal with some of that stuff already and reconcile with some of it, that it allows them to put others first and be humble enough to say, like, look, I don't know the space. I know my people. I don't know the space. So I think this is what I think my people need. And so I've been humbled by that because that is, if that's not leadership, then I don't know what is. You know what I mean?
Do you know what? People are slowly but surely becoming the leader they need.
Thank you for saying that. It took me a long time to come up with that title.
It's a solid title, my bro.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope that people at home watching this get a chance to attend one of the workshops that James so expertly facilitates. I was moved. Like I said, I was moved, and just being around you, kind of picking your brain, I learned a lot. And, you know, I can't wait for more people to see your stuff.
Oh, well, I'm very humbled by that praise. Thank you so much. I'm also very humbled that people spend their Saturday mornings with me, because it's a Saturday morning.
Yeah, true. It was well worth it.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think we'll wrap up there, to be honest, and save James having to listen to any more of my questions. But is there anything you want to say in closing?
No, I'm grateful that you found the workshop helpful. I'm grateful for everyone who attends my workshops. And yeah, if you attended, hopefully you feel the same way he felt.
Thank you so much. Nuanced. MindRight. nuMind. Out.